I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传是一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
Thanks to Bill for his presentation. And yet again, we merge. Bill's subject matter is in perfect harmony and complement to mine, which I've chosen to call the Tao of the Unseen today. And in keeping with that, we will be talking about the Jing, Qi, and Shen. And I found it, of course, it's no longer really surprising to me when Bill chooses a topic and it runs along the same line, and or the chapter that we're following in the Tao Te Ching addresses similar issues, because that is just the alignment of the Tao, which fits in perfectly with what I'm talking about today, which is unseen energy. And really, what does that mean? You know, when we talk about these unseen forces, the Qi, like Bill was referring to in his presentation, this reference we see most heavily in Chinese medicine, in acupuncture, and the theories behind Chinese medicine, which is energy-based. And certainly Chinese medicine is not the only form of energy-based healing and or medicine, but it is probably the most widely known and widely studied. I've provided a link. This is to NIH research. What I'll do is just kind of minimize this for a second and bring it up, so hopefully you guys can see this. So this is a good study, and there are literally hundreds that you could reference that talk about traditional Chinese medicine and the actual scientific validation and or proof for veracity of the treatment modalities that are used. And the second reference and resource that I would refer to as we go to this is Dr. Xin Lin, who is a friend of mine at the University of California, Irvine. And he has a lab for mind-body signaling and energy research. He's the head of UCI's biophysics program. He was formerly at Johns Hopkins University, a very well-respected researcher and scientist, who is also a Tai Chi Chuan master, specializing in Shen style and also in Wing Chun. Excuse me. So Dr. Lin has come as my guest to the Mindful Awareness Research Center at UCLA to talk, and has been kind enough to teach me upon occasion. On this website, if you're interested in this, there you'll see a research tab over here. So you can click on that, and part of Shin's work has been to essentially segregate the wheat from the chaff and really begin an understanding of the reams of data out there about energy-based healing and or medicine, and begin to bring in rigorous scientific standards in order to understand this rather than wishful thinking. There are many scientific studies which are skewed due to the researchers' natural predilections. If we want something to be true, we tend to look for the things that we'd like to see. Principle of relativity. So those who follow rigorous scientific standards try to remain unbiased, and despite the fact that we may believe or not believe something, simply follow the observations. And Dr. Lin is quite astute at that practice. So, and the reason I bring this up is because a lot of people think that it's not true. They will talk about energy-based medicine, energy in the body, these healing practices that are thousands of years old, and we see references in this back as far as 4,000 years ago, referring to Chinese medical practices, the use of bone needles, and we're just now getting to the point where we can actually see evidence of these practices. Now, I've been to Shin's lab multiple times, and he has every device known to mankind, that literally known to modern science, that can measure energy in various forms: heat, light, electrical energy, and he has been fortunate enough to bring guests who are specialists and or experts in Tai Chi, Qigong, Reiki, any number of different practices to his lab so that he can measure their body in various ways when they're emitting energy from it. And the most relevant and obvious is temperature. So he could put an infrared, I've taken another teacher of mine down there to be measured with him, and one of the things that he will do is place an infrared camera on the person's whatever body part they so choose, but usually the long gum points on the hands. And we can see a marked temperature increase through the shift of intention with Qigong masters and those who do practice these healing methods. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors to this stuff too. There are a lot of people who are legitimate masters, but also feel as though it's necessary to sort of bolster the external manifestation of that and create dramatic effects. And again, through the use of science, because they'll use methods that are a little that have to do with chemical reactions to generate heat and things like that. But the truth is, these are called subtle energies, and they're called subtle energies for a reason. Now, when we talk about this, this is for healing practices, and for us to consider that there might be a link to this universal source that goes beyond the scope of what we can actually see and touch. Now, kind of holding that thought in mind, if we think about the world of martial arts, Bill talked about these terms that we see in Chinese medicine and the practice of the energy of flowing with the Tao. So Jing, the original essence, something that we come through with heredity. We have a certain amount of that that's finite, and we can shore it up so that we can increase our longevity, but it's kind of what we have. The Qi is the energy, and it is considered heaven Qi, earth Qi, and life Qi, and that as we align ourselves with the energy of heaven and earth, that as we synchronize that, being a live organism, that being part of nature, that we will live a more harmonious life, and that our body will function harmoniously if we align ourselves with that energy that's very natural. And then the Shen, the spirit, the intention. I was offered by one of my teachers an analogy of a candle. And the candle, the Jing, would be the wax itself, which is a finite supply. The Qi is like the flame, the energy of the candle. And the Shen is like the light that is emitted from the flame. So I always found that to be quite a useful analogy when we talk about this in terms of the human body and how that energy may be either in us or emitted from us. Now, with martial arts, you hear a lot of talk of Qi, and you'll see the title on my slide, which is the Tao of Bull, and you can fill in the blank, because there's a lot of it out there. I call these guys Qi bullies, And this is a gentleman named whose screen name is Master Ken, and this is a gag. It's something that he posts videos on YouTube. He's an actor, and this actor sort of falls in the same general category as if anybody ever saw Napoleon Dynamite, the Rex Kwon Do. The guy who wears the American gi pants and is sort of a farce of what we might find in the world of martial arts. It's not too far afield from the truth, though. There's a bunch of the stuff that goes on. Anybody who's in it will know this. So Master Ken, if you just YouTube some of his videos, they're pretty funny. The guy, he created a system called Amira Dote. So it's quite comical, and intentionally so. Now, non-intentionally, you will see all over the internet, you can just search YouTube, Chi masters who purportedly fling around their students by waving their hands in the air, and you'll see these students who are jumping and flying and zipping all over the place because of their use of intention. And then you'll see a few examples of where you have, one of these masters who has kind of a issue of self hypnosis, almost considered all this nonsense that they preach to be true, to where they'll go and be challenged by some guy who's a boxer or an MMA fighter or something like that, and then they'll challenge them. So you can guess the inevitable outcome most of the time with this is that they will, try to emit chi. The guy will walk up and just punch him in the face. Now, does that refute the fact that there is chi or that it exists? My personal experience is no. And also I have other personal experiences that most people who really are legitimate practitioners don't feel a need to stick it all over YouTube. Now, the questions to ask ourselves, does this exist, is to look at the facts. There is considerable scientific evidence which backs this claim. There's considerable anecdotal evidence that backs this claim. There's a reason the stuff has been around for thousands of years. There have been many people who have been helped by these practices. Now, is it because one's intention and or mind intervenes? Is this psychosomatic? Do we convince ourselves, and in doing so, the mind is a powerful tool, it's clear. Do we heal ourselves because we're convinced that the healing is happening? Is it a placebo effect? Well, I think that the majority of the evidence indicates that it's a combination of the two. That you have to have a positive mind state in order to facilitate healing, and that there is a connection to an external energy. There is something from outside of us that can intervene and aid in the process of our healing. And it would make sense that there was, if we think that there's something that can heal us or something that could potentially hurt us as well. I'm going to tell you about an experience I had with a gentleman probably about 20 years ago. This gentleman's name is Shoto Tanemura. I had studied with him and with one of his students extensively. His student, Chadwick Ninge, is a former special operations soldier who was in some of the first insertion teams in Vietnam. So this guy, I know him well, and he is not prone to wishful thinking. He's been in live combat, a lot of it, and knows the difference between wishful thinking and practicality. So he studied with Master Tanemura. Master Tanemura is a practitioner of Ninpo Taijutsu. Now, ninjutsu is one of the subcategories of these arts, and there is no art which has more bull, flying than that of ninjutsu. because the ninja, with the ninja movies in the 1970s, there was a lot of hokey pokey stuff going on in that whole world, and a lot of practitioners that are questionable at best. So what that came from was the samurai battle arts. And ninjutsu was a subcategory that had to do with infiltration and espionage, no more nor less. And in that day, these guys were the assassins. So this lineage has continued, and there are two primary practitioners now, Hatsumi and Tanemura. And I was able to study with Tanemura pretty extensively. And part of this is the use of chi, use of energy. I had two experiences with the guy that I cannot explain, and I'm a pretty practical guy. I used to fight professionally in Muay Thai, and I fought in a bunch of other stuff too, full contact karate and all that. So again, I kind of know what works and what doesn't. And first experience I had was that we were training with Master Tanemura in the dojo, and he demonstrated a technique, and someone performed a sword thrust at him, and he pivoted away, much in the same way Bill described his son had pivoted away from the kick, and he threw a guy, but he gave him sort of an extra bonus slap. He nailed him on the back as he was going by and threw the fella. Well, the guy had a hard time breathing. When he hit the deck, it wasn't because he landed really hard on the mat. It was because of the placement of the blow, which was near the mid-back. And so the guy, I mean, literally could not breathe correctly. And so Master Tanemura went over to him and started, sort of performing some exercises to help him to be able to breathe. So about 2 or 3 hours went by, and it was time to break for, I guess it was lunch. So we went into the changing room, pulled off our gis, and when I looked at the guy's back, there was a red handprint on the guy's back from where he was whacked that had an outline that was like a sunburn. And I had no reason to lie to you about this. This was 3 hours later. So if you slap somebody in the back, sure, there's going to be blood that will rise to the surface of the capillaries and will create an outline for a period of time, but it goes away within about 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't stay with you like a sunburn, and the thing stayed on the guy for the next 3 days. So that would be what I would first offer as an indication that there's something there going on that is a bit different. And the second experience is my personal experience, where I asked Tanemura Sensei to demonstrate, what would he do about a common attack. And so being a Thai boxer, I said, okay, so low line round kick, defense. And so he just kind of looked at me and grunted and said, and motioned toward me. And I could see Sensei Chadwick in the background kind of putting his head in his hands like, oh man, he did not ask him to do that. And so he motioned to me to go ahead and throw the kick at him. Now, I didn't come at him full on like I was really trying to, blow his leg apart, or because I was respectful to him and had no desire to disprove his ability. I just literally wanted to see what the defense would be from that art. So here's what happened. I stepped in to throw the kick, and as I stepped in to throw the kick, I completely lost track of the guy. I mean, this is in a fluorescent lit dojo in North Hollywood. I step in, and I literally could not see where the guy went. I know it sounds weird. The next thing I know, he's behind me, kicking me in the groin, knocking me down, and he had his hands over my ears, showing me that that's what he would have done to blow out my eardrums, and his hands were red hot. And I literally have no idea how the guy got around behind me. And it felt like somebody threw a blanket on my head. So he just kind of, laughed and he kicked me a little bit in the groin, but not enough to do any damage, just enough to drop me down. And I could see a look of relief on Sensei Ninja's face, because he didn't actually, because he'd been traveling through Europe when people had done the same thing, and people with bad intent, Tanemura Sensei had dropped and hurt him enough to prove the point. So to me, this is clear evidence, because I experienced it myself, and he expressed it was the use of the shi-ki, as they pronounce it in Japanese, to sort of cloak his movement. So I would not believe this if had I not experienced it actually directly myself. So anecdotal evidence is that which one has through experience and they communicate it. Scientific evidence is that which is documented through scientific means. I would just suggest that both of these things are in abundance, and to investigate for yourself. Now, if we kind of look further into this, and what does this mean in terms of ramifications? If we look at quantum physics, many of the hypotheses now have really proposed that our universe is comprised primarily of consciousness, not hard matter. And you'll see many articles about dark matter and the theories that are proposed about that, and that this is a foundational element of our universe. So is it reasonable to assume that this stuff that the universe is made up of is the same stuff that we're made up of? I think on a molecular level, it's pretty clear that we are. We had a nanotechnologist come in and talk to us at our research center, and he said that they were mapping the cellular surfaces, and what they do is essentially drop in a microscopic needle, and it maps the cell surface for healthy and sick cells, so they can begin to differentiate between them and start to learn what makes a healthy cell and a sick cell. And he said that as they were moving through this research, again, this is probably about 10 years ago, he said, this is off the record because we haven't, applied rigorous scientific standards to this, but as we were moving the needle down and away from these cell structures, somebody noticed there's this sound, this ambient sound. What is that? And so they began to investigate, and they began to discover that there is a sonic vibration coming from cells. And it differs based on the health and configuration of the cell. And as you look at this under an electron microscope, it looks like a sea, an ocean. And he hypothesized that perhaps this is what connects the cells. It's how they communicate to one another, because we know they communicate to one another, but we still don't really know how. And he hypothesized that perhaps this is chi. Perhaps this is the energy that we can now begin to actually understand and see. So is it enough to assume that if we can't touch it or see it or feel it with our hands and eyes that it doesn't exist? Well, I personally think not. But I personally also think that those who are attuned and sensitive, as we were talking about in a self-defense situation, and more to the body's healing in these practices, is this something that through intuition, through that sensitivity, through that subtle energy, that we can cultivate and we can develop? I personally suggest that it is. And we can verify it through scientific method, and as our ability to do so increases, I think we'll find more and more that this is the case. And this connection with the Tao, this universal source that it's very clear that that isolating pieces may help us to understand those pieces, but it's that summation of parts, that unity, the great unity, which ultimately yields the greatest level of understanding. So I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation today, and I will look forward to speaking to you again.
Hey Ed, that's probably one of my favorite talks from you because of the personal experience that you have infused into it.
Well, thank you.
So and actually Bill has been listening in, and he's completely in agreement. He says you're right on the money, especially when it comes to some of the fraudsters, some of the scam artists out there, and his comment, that was excellent, right on the money, that was excellent.
Well, thank
and
you.
also from Nicole, good stuff, thanks. And also feedback for Bill, hopefully Bill's still listening. From Tim, excellent job, Bill. From Bob, thank you, Bill. You are the voice of the Tao in my life today. And from Alex, Bill, wonderful talk. Thank you. And I further want to thank you, Ed, for bringing to light some of these things out there. Here's the thing for the people who don't know Ed in person. I can tell you, after a decade of knowing him and his wife and his many students, their friends, associates, their teachers, I can tell you that Ed is the real deal. He's a hardcore skeptic. In addition to being, an expert in multiple martial traditions, he's also extremely familiar with the methodology and the thinking process behind science. And he's been participating in many scientific studies over the years. So whenever Ed says that something is true, I absolutely believe. And this takes me away from, when I talk about myself as being, my thinking being close to that of an atheist, well, it gets constantly challenged by great people like Ed, and of course Bill, because when they investigate the Tao, they cannot avoid coming across things that defy explanation. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you have in the various sciences and how skeptical you are in explaining away some of these extraordinary things with explanations that make sense in science. None of that matters, especially when you have a personal experience. It basically trumps everything else. I have seen it. I have heard about it. There's another friend that I have, someone who studies ninjutsu in the school founded by American ninjutsu master Stephen Hayes. And Stephen Hayes studied under Masaki Hatsuma, who's a Japanese grandmaster. And one of the things that Hatsuma frequently did was that he would demonstrate this advanced level of awareness that goes beyond the physical. Like when he gives a talk, and he did this in the United States as well when he went on tour, he would give a talk, and then he would invite just random people from the audience, and their job is to stand behind him, make sure that there's no way that Grandmaster Hatsumi can see them behind him and what they're about to do. Their job is to hit him in the back of the head. So they're advised to not signal that they're going to strike, not breathe, not make a sound, and then just strike at a random moment. And every single time, the Grandmaster, just when he's about to be struck, he would move his head suddenly to one side or the other, avoiding the strike. But he can't see it. He can't hear the sounds that are being made, and it's so sudden. How does he do it? what I have no idea, but I know that it can be done. He's actually even training his senior disciples so that when they are to be certified, one of the tests is that they have to sit. And one person will be in the back wielding a wooden stick, and again, the job is to hit the back of the head without making a sound at a random moment. And in order to pass the test, the person being tested has to be able to evade that. So think about how difficult that is. Someone, standing behind you, you are in a seated position, and you have to move one way or the other just at the right moment when that stick is coming down hard on your head. I cannot even imagine. At the same time, I cannot deny that it's absolutely true. Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架深鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜翻一鞠躬。We're done, everybody. Thank you so much.